The sun hadn't fully risen over Baton Rouge, but the air already carried that sticky weight I remembered from my childhood, the kind that made even standing still feel like work. I adjusted the black dress I hadn't worn in years and glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Lips too tight, eyes too tired, hands gripping the steering wheel as if it could keep me grounded. I told myself maybe this would be different. Maybe loss would soften people, make space for decency. But as I pulled into the parking lot of St. Raymond's Chapel, I knew I was lying to myself. Inside, the sanctuary buzzed with polite grief. Women in pearls dabbed at their eyes, and men offered stiff, one-armed hugs. The smell of lilies overwhelmed everything, too strong, too sweet, like the performance unfolding all around. I hovered near the entrance for a beat too long. No one noticed, or maybe they did, and decided not to acknowledge it. My cousin Trevor gave me a tight nod from across the room. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. When I stepped forward, I saw them. My sister Valora flanked by her husband and their perfectly dressed kids, standing by the casket like they were hosting a garden party. Her face didn't flicker when she saw me. If anything, she looked mildly inconvenienced, like I'd shown up wearing white to her wedding. I took a breath and walked toward the front. "You shouldn't have come," she hissed, not bothering to lower her voice. I froze, one foot still mid-step. "Excuse me? You're not family anymore," she said, loud enough for the people in the first pew to hear. "Trash like you doesn't belong here." I heard the gasp from Aunt May. I waited for someone, anyone, to speak up. No one did. Not our mother, sitting quietly with her hands folded. Not our uncle, who I once helped fix his roof in the pouring rain. Not even the pastor. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest burned, my throat tightened, and I could feel the blood draining from my face, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I steadied my hands, forced myself to keep my voice level. "I came to say goodbye to my father," I said. "Not to you." Valora smirked. "Then do it quickly." I looked down at the casket. Dad's face was serene, like he had no idea of the war still raging around him. I wanted to believe he'd have been ashamed of this. I wanted to believe he'd stop her if he could. But wanting didn't change the silence. I turned around and walked toward the back. Whispers followed like shadows. "Is that her? I thought she moved out of state." "She's still alive. Valora said she was in rehab." The comments sliced sharper than anything Valora said, but I kept walking. Near the front entrance, someone had arranged a photo board, a tribute to Dad's life. Fishing trips, birthdays, barbecues. People paused to admire the collage, pointing out old memories and laughing softly. I stepped closer, scanning the photos. My eyes darted from frame to frame. There was one from Dad's retirement party, another from their anniversary in 2003, a dozen with Valora and her kids, some with family friends, even neighbors, but not one with me, not even the one I took with him 2 years ago, our last photo together on the porch, just after I fixed the broken swing. He said, "This one's a keeper." But apparently it wasn't worth keeping. I stood there too long enough for someone to murmur behind me. Maybe they thought it'd upset Valora to see her. I didn't turn around. I didn't cry. I just walked outside. The heat hit me like a slap, thick and unapologetic. Cicadas buzzed in the trees. I stood on the steps, letting the sun scorch my skin. I pulled a tissue from my purse and wiped the mascara smudging under my eye. It left a dark streak across my cheek. Or paint, I thought, or maybe a badge. I'd hoped funerals might offer closure, a moment to step into grief together, but I'd been wrong. Funerals aren't always about goodbyes. Sometimes they're just confirmations. Proof that the door you thought was still ajar had been slammed shut long ago. I didn't look back as I walked to my car, didn't pause to wave or offer a polite nod. I slid into the seat, started the engine, and let the AC blast against my face. As I pulled away from the church, I made a decision so quiet it didn't even feel like one. I was done waiting for an invitation to matter. I hadn't even made it to the hostess stand when I felt the first wave of regret roll in. There they were, My entire family, already seated, laughing a little too loudly, wine glasses half full, plates of hush puppies nearly empty. No one looked toward the door. I stood for a moment longer than necessary, unsure if they'd even noticed me walk in. "Reservation under Valora," I told the hostess. She nodded and gestured toward the back. That was my second regret, following her. We weaved through the tables, past a couple holding hands and an elderly man fussing with his glasses. I scanned ahead, and there it was, the long table stretched across the back wall. Everyone was packed in tight, and the only empty seat was at the very end, right next to the swinging door marked "Restrooms." The napkin on the table had my name scribbled in pen, not even a name card, just a paper napkin, folded once and pinned under a butter knife. "Right here, ma'am," the hostess said with a too bright smile. I smiled back, but it cracked at the corners. I sat down as the restroom door swung open behind me, releasing a draft of bleach and something sour I didn't want to identify. Valora finally looked up. "Oh, good, you made it," she said, her tone casual, like I was someone she barely remembered inviting. "We weren't sure." I opened my mouth but shut it again. There wasn't a single apology in her voice. No empty chair shifted to make room further up the table. Everyone stayed where they were, eyes flickering, but no one spoke. I sat next to the smell of mop water and disappointment. Apparently, that's where trash belonged. The waitress approached with menus. I declined. "I wasn't here to eat." My mother waved from across the table. "Amabel, did you see what Valora gave me?" she called out. I forced a smile. "Not yet." She lifted a quilt, folded neatly in her lap. My quilt. A patchwork of soft colors and stitched verses, Romans, Psalms, Proverbs, my mother's favorites, sewn by my hand over weeks. I'd mailed it with a handwritten card, addressed only to her, with care instructions and a note about the fabric being from the store she used to love. Valora beamed. I had it made by a local artisan. Took some time, but worth it. I stared, not a single glance in my direction. Not from her, not from Mom. Someone clapped lightly. "It's beautiful," Aunt Janice said. "Thoughtful," another cousin murmured. I felt the burn crawl up my neck, settling beneath my collar. I opened my clutch, pretending to check my phone. I didn't want to cause a scene, not here, not like this. But inside, something broke with a quiet snap. Later, as they passed around bread baskets and crab cakes, the questions came. "So what are you doing these days, Amabel?" Uncle Rob asked, not bothering to lean toward me. "Still between things?" Aunt May added, with a smile like sugar. "It must be nice," another voice chimed in. "All that free time." I nodded politely, dabbing the corner of my mouth, though I hadn't touched a single bite. "I'm freelancing," I said calmly. "It's flexible." Valora tilted her head. "Flexible," she repeated. "Isn't that just code for unemployed?" Laughter followed, not loud, but just enough. I sipped my water. Cool, tasteless. I imagined upending it into her lap, just for a moment. But I didn't. Jessamine sent me a glance down the table, her expression unreadable. She was older now, more aware, but still sitting at Valora's side. The table continued, like I wasn't even there. The narrative had been set. I was the black sheep, the dropout, the charity case they tolerated. And the thing is, none of them even looked cruel. That was the worst part. They looked entertained. I studied their faces, seeing people who once sang Happy Birthday off-key and helped build a treehouse that never stayed up. Now they nodded at Valora's lies like a metronome, steady, unbothered. This dinner wasn't about Mom, it wasn't about family, it was a stage, and Valora was holding the script. Dessert arrived. Lemon cake, Mom's favorite, the same kind I used to bake from scratch in my cramped kitchen, the one with the oven that never quite shut all the way. They passed slices. No one asked if I wanted one. A plate appeared in front of me anyway, already half crumbled from passing hands. I stared at it. When it came time for the photo, someone said, "Can you take it, Amabel? You've got the longest arms." I took the phone. I lined up the shot. I said, "Say cheese." I clicked. Then I stepped back. I looked at the image. Valora in the center, arm around Mom, everyone leaning in, grinning. I wasn't even in the frame. I hit delete. They didn't notice. I stood up slowly, slipping my bag over my shoulder. No one asked where I was going. No one stopped me. Outside, the night had cooled. A breeze pushed against my face, and I let it. I walked to my car, heels clicking against the concrete like punctuation marks. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just opened the door, sat down, and exhaled. You can sit at a table and still not have a seat. It had been 3 months since that dinner. 3 months since I sat by a restroom door pretending not to hear every flush and every insult disguised as family banter. Since then, I had kept to myself. No phone calls, no birthday texts, no pretending we were something we weren't. But I needed groceries, and I missed the farmer's market on Magnolia Street, so I went. The moment I stepped onto the gravel lot, I knew it was a mistake. Rows of vendors lined the paths, bright produce and home-baked breads under pop-up tents. The smell of roasted peanuts and kettle corn floated through the warm air. It felt like childhood, like normalcy, but normal had never really belonged to me, not since Valora had rewritten it. Amabel? I turned. It was Rachel. Not my closest high school friend, but someone I used to share notes and fries with. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a mason jar filled with hibiscus tea. "Wow, it's been ages," she said, pulling me into a one-armed hug. "You look, well." "Thanks," I said, matching her smile but not the energy. "You too." We chatted for a few minutes. Jobs, weather, mutual acquaintances. Then, out of nowhere, her tone shifted. "So, is it true what happened? I mean, I heard you left town after everything. Valora said you just needed space." I blinked. "Space?" "Yeah. I don't want to pry, of course. Just, people said there was some sort of scandal. You and that guy from the old real estate firm?" My stomach tightened. I'd never dated anyone from a real estate firm. I didn't even know who she meant. "I'm not sure where that came from," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Rachel flushed. "Sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up. It's just, Valora always made it sound like you were going through a lot." "I see." We stood there for a beat too long. She looked down at her jar. "Well, good seeing you. You too." I walked away slowly, the weight of her words pressing down harder than the heat. It wasn't just whispers behind my back anymore. The lies had spilled beyond the dinner table, into front porches and book clubs. I wasn't just being left out, I was being rewritten. Back at my apartment, I tossed my keys onto the counter and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I finally typed my name into the Facebook search bar. It didn't take long. Threads of comments, tagged posts, vague status updates from distant cousins. Some people just run when things get hard. She left her mom sick and alone. Valora tried, poor thing. You can't help someone who won't help themselves. Each line hit like a slap I'd been bracing for, but never quite expecting. They painted a picture of someone reckless, selfish, unstable. And the worst part? No one had ever asked for my version. There was even a photo, Valora standing beside Mom in that same quilt I'd made, captioned, "The gift I made for her birthday. Took me weeks, but worth every second." The comments below were glowing. "You're such a good daughter. So thoughtful. I wish I had a sister like you." I stared at the screen until the image blurred. My cursor hovered over the delete button, and for a moment I hesitated. But then I clicked, account settings, deactivate, confirm. If they wanted a story, they could have it. But I wasn't going to be a silent character in it anymore. Later that evening, Jessamine came home from her part-time job. She was taller now, carrying herself with a quiet confidence I didn't remember seeing just a year ago. She dropped her bag by the door and joined me on the couch without a word. "There's something I should tell you," she said after a few minutes. I waited. "A few weeks ago, I heard Aunt Valora talking to Aunt Sheila on the phone. She didn't know I was in the hallway." My chest tightened. "What did she say?" Jessamine looked down at her hands. "She said, you were unstable, that it was better not to talk about you, that it kept the family calmer." I closed my eyes. I knew it wasn't true. she added quickly. I remembered everything, how you were the one who showed up, the one who stayed when Grandma had surgery, the one who helped me with my science fair project, but I didn't know how to help you. You just did, I said quietly. Jessamine blinked back tears. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I reached for her hand. You don't need to carry what I've lived through. Just stay true to what you know. That's more than enough. We sat there, silent but steady. Something shifted in me. The shame I'd worn like a second skin began to peel away. That night, after Jessamine went to bed, I sat at my desk and pulled out an old leather-bound journal, the one I hadn't touched in years. Page 1, date, then a sentence. I am not what they say. I kept writing. Memories, truths, things I'd buried under silence and courtesy. The more I wrote, the lighter I felt. I wasn't trying to convince anyone. I wasn't writing for them. I was writing to remember myself. They had controlled the narrative for so long. But I still had my pen. I won't be silent just because they're loud, I wrote. And I meant it. When I closed the journal, a ping echoed from my phone. A text, unknown number. No greeting, just one line. You should have stayed gone. The house was still. Too still. Jessamine and I had arrived just before noon, but something about stepping into Mom's old place made the air feel heavier. The blinds hadn't been opened in months, and the light filtering in was soft, golden, dusty. I told myself I was only here to help Jess sort through a few keepsakes, maybe box up the photo albums, then go. But I should have known better. Check this out, Jessamine called from the back bedroom. I followed her voice past the kitchen, past the sewing nook Mom had turned into a pantry when the arthritis got bad, into the room Valora used to claim for herself during family holidays. There it was, a dresser. Familiar, tall, solid cherry wood. But what caught our attention wasn't the furniture itself. It was the locked drawer, bottom right. I've never seen that one opened, Jessamine said, crouching. Aunt Valora said there wasn't anything worth keeping. My hand stilled on the handle. She said that? Jessamine nodded. After the funeral, when we came to clean out the closets, she told us Mom's stuff was mostly junk. I knelt beside her. Grab me that letter opener. We worked the edge into the side, heard a click, and the drawer gave way. A stack of old paperwork shifted forward. Insurance forms, yellowed receipts, faded envelopes, and then I saw it. A manila folder with one word in Mom's handwriting. Will. I sat back on my heels, pulse quickening. Jessamine looked at me. Is that? I nodded. It's real. I took the envelope gently, like it might crumble if I moved too fast. My father's voice echoed in my mind from a conversation we'd had not long before his stroke. I made sure you'd be taken care of, Amabel. I had believed him. And then I hadn't. Now, I wasn't sure what to believe. At the kitchen table, I spread the papers out carefully. The will was notarized, stamped, dated 3 months before his passing. It named Valora and me as joint beneficiaries. Specifically, it left me a small plot of land near Tyler, Texas, property my grandfather once farmed. It also detailed shared inheritance rights over the family home and remaining savings. None of that had ever been mentioned. At the post-funeral meeting with Valora's attorney, I'd been told the will never existed. I was asked to sign a release of interest to simplify proceedings. And I had. But now I was staring at what had been hidden. There's something else, Jessamine said, pointing. Another document, thicker, printed more recently. I flipped through it. It looked like a property transfer, the deed to Mom's house, but there was only one name, Valora's. I froze. This is the house, right? Jessamine asked. Yeah, I said, scanning the document again. I dug deeper. Paperclip still attached to the back. The original version showed 2 names, mine and Valora's on the same line, marked joint ownership pending finalization. The date stamps. The original was signed 4 days before Dad's stroke. The edited one was printed 10 days after his funeral. She'd removed me, quietly, surgically. No fanfare, no confrontation, just an erasure. I leaned back, the kitchen light buzzing softly overhead. I thought about Mom's face whenever I brought up estate stuff, how she'd look away, suddenly needing tea, a walk, a distraction. I remembered Aunt Sheila once saying, "Your sister handled things fast, huh?" Yeah, fast, too fast. They didn't just forget me, I said aloud. They deleted me. I copied everything, every page, every signature, every note. I placed the originals back where we found them. No need to tip off the enemy too soon. That evening, back home in my apartment, I sat at my desk and opened my email. I sent a message to Miriam, a colleague from my old job at the library, who'd once mentioned her sister was a lawyer. Subject: urgent, family legal help needed. She replied within the hour. I scanned the documents and attached them. When I hit send, my hands trembled, not with fear, but something colder: resolve. My phone rang 20 minutes later. "This is Lauren Chan," the voice said. "Miriam forwarded me your message. I've reviewed the files. You might have a case, Ms. Tyrell, but I won't lie, it's going to get messy." "I'm not afraid of messy," I replied. "I've lived through silence. I'm ready for noise." We discussed timelines, options, how to file a formal dispute, and what discovery might look like. When I hung up, the room felt smaller somehow, the air dense. I stood at the window, watching dusk roll over the tops of the pines. Somewhere out there, Valora was still smiling that empty, polished smile, still spinning stories, still sitting comfortably on a throne built with stolen bricks. Not for long. My phone lit up again. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then a voice. Female. Low. Controlled. "You've been digging where you don't belong." Click. It was the kind of humidity only Baton Rouge could deliver. Thick, unrelenting, the kind that clung to you like guilt. I remember that morning clearly. The courtroom was too cold, like they were trying to refrigerate human emotion out of the process. My hands were shaking, not because I was nervous, but because I knew deep down, no matter what I said, this room wasn't built for women like me. I sat at the petitioner's table, my lawyer flipping through notes with a calm that felt cruel. Across from us, my ex-husband, pressed shirt, fake smile, pretended to look sad. Then came the voice that still rings in my head. "I'd like to call Valora Tyrell to the stand." I turned my head so sharply it almost hurt. She walked in like she was stepping onto a stage, light blue blouse, pearl earrings, that rehearsed concern in her expression. "Miss Tyrell, how would you describe your sister's ability to parent?" Valora folded her hands, tilted her head slightly. "I love my sister," she said, voice soft. "But we have to be honest. Amabel has struggled. Emotionally, financially. She has a history. Episodes in her 20s. Anxiety, depressive spells. Things that made her withdraw from the family." My attorney stood to object, but the judge let it ride. Valora continued, undeterred. "I've watched her spiral. I've picked up the pieces more times than I can count, and while I admire her strength in certain ways, stability is what Jessamine needs right now." I didn't move. I didn't cry. I stared at the judge's face, trying to read it, blank. My ex's lawyer nodded approvingly. I watched Jessamine, just 12 at the time, sitting between her father and Valora, looking anywhere but at me. I didn't get to speak. My lawyer advised against it, said the optics wouldn't help, said the paperwork Valora handed over had credibility, said I could revisit custody later. But we both knew I wouldn't be able to afford to. The ruling came down before lunch. Full custody awarded to the father, visitation, every other weekend and alternating holidays. I walked out of the courtroom like someone carrying a bomb too delicate to set down. In the bathroom, I slid down the wall until I was on the floor. I stayed there for a long time, knees tucked to my chest, the sound of a hand dryer drowning out the scream I wouldn't let out. That's how you lose a child. Not in one dramatic moment, not in a hospital, in a courtroom, on a Tuesday. Back home, everything changed. The living room looked too big. Her bed stayed made. Her toothbrush never moved. And when she did come, she was quiet. Polite. Like a guest. We had to plan our relationship in chunks. 2 hours at the park. Pick up at 5. Drop off by 7. Conversations filtered through scheduling apps and emails. Then came the moment I still taste in my throat. She was 14. We were sitting on the back porch, sipping lemonade. Out of nowhere, she asked, "Why don't you want me full-time like Dad does?" I couldn't speak at first. She blinked at me, waiting, not angry, just confused, like maybe there was something broken in her she hadn't yet discovered. I took her hand. "It's not that I didn't want you," I said carefully. "It's that I wasn't allowed to have you." "Why?" she asked. "What happened?" "I'll tell you one day," I whispered. "But not when your trust in the world is still this fragile." Inside, something broke clean. Not loud, just final. You can lose a child and still see them every weekend. Years passed. Jessamine grew. And somehow, we still found each other, even in the gaps. One afternoon, I stopped for gas on my way back from the grocery store. As I pumped, I heard someone call my name. "Amabel?" I turned. Mrs. Diane from 3 doors down back in the old neighborhood. White curls, pink lipstick, still carried that huge purse with the fabric flower stitched on. We hugged, exchanged the usual pleasantries, then her tone shifted. "I hope this isn't overstepping," she began, "but I always thought it was strange how fast Valora and your ex got close after the divorce." I tilted my head. "What do you mean, close?" She hesitated. "Well, I'd see her parked outside his place, sometimes for hours. Said she was dropping off things for Jessamine, but—" She trailed off. I nodded. "Thank you." "People see more than you think," she added gently. "We just don't always know what to do with what we see." Driving home, her words replayed over and over. It's not always strangers who build the gallows. Sometimes it's your own blood holding the rope. That night, Jessamine and I sat on the back porch again. She was home for the weekend, now 18, more sure of herself, but still curious. She stared at the stars a moment, then asked, "Why didn't you fight harder back then?" I paused, letting the silence settle before answering. "I didn't have an army. I didn't even have armor. I had one person, me. No lawyer could out-yell the lies Valora made stick." Jessamine's eyes didn't blink. "But you didn't tell me." "I was trying to protect you." "I thought you didn't want me." Her voice didn't crack. It was a statement, not an accusation. I exhaled. "I didn't walk away because I didn't love you. I walked because I didn't have a sword." Jessamine reached for her phone. "You should see this," she said. She turned the screen toward me. There was Valora, smiling, perfectly styled, standing behind a podium. The flyer read, "Women Who Inspire," featuring Valora Tyrell. The winning numbers blinked back at me from the phone screen like they belonged to someone else. I sat there in my kitchen, still in pajamas, holding the Powerball ticket I'd bought on a whim with the last crumpled 5 in my wallet. $30 million. Just like that. A shift in the air, but not in my gut. Because even with that number hanging in the space between my fingers, I knew what it really meant. "They're coming," I whispered, mostly to myself. "Now they'll come crawling." But it wasn't excitement I felt. It was a kind of dread that moved slow, like fog settling in. I hadn't told anyone, not even Jessamine. I needed time to breathe before the noise. And I wanted to sit with the win, quiet and unannounced, for just a little longer. I'd imagined this moment in 100 different ways, me paying off student loans, buying land, building a life from the ground up. Never once did it come with strings shaped like my sister's name. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Congratulations, little sis. Can we talk?" The next morning, she was on my doorstep. Valora stood in a pristine white blouse and oversized sunglasses, one hand gripping the handle of a silver carry-on suitcase. Her smile was perfect, her tone breezy. "Didn't want to call. Figured I'd surprise you." It took me a second too long to react. Then I stepped aside. Not because I forgave her, not because I forgot what she did, but because sometimes letting someone walk in is the only way to watch how they behave when they think no one's paying attention. "Come in," I said. She walked past me like she had a right to. As I closed the door, I felt something shift under my ribs. Not fear, not anger. Something colder, something sharper. In the kitchen, I made coffee. She didn't wait to be invited to sit. She parked herself on the armchair across from the window that overlooked the cliff. The ocean roared below, but all I could hear was the silence in the room stretching taut. "This place," she said, glancing around, "is beautiful. You always did have good taste. How'd you find this gem?" "Craigslist," I lied. She laughed. "Oh, come on." I just poured the coffee. Valora took the mug, swirling it like she'd done 100 times before in someone else's kitchen. "So," she said, drawing out the word, 30 million. That's quite a change. I met her eyes. "Is it?" "Oh, don't be like that. You know what I mean? It's a blessing, a second chance, for everyone." "Everyone?" She leaned in. "I was thinking, maybe this is a sign. You and me? Fresh start." I waited. "I've been dealing with so much lately," she continued. "The family's been pulling me in 10 directions. I just needed to get away for a bit. Reset." "And you chose here?" "Well, sure. I mean, we're sisters. Family doesn't always get it right the first time, but we learn. We grow." I studied her face. Her voice had softened, but her eyes were scanning the room, calculating. "I think we should focus on healing," she added, "not rehashing the past." There it was. No apology, no ownership. Just curated vulnerability wrapped in a motivational poster. "I'll get the guest room ready," I said. She smiled wider. "Thank you." I didn't tell her the room was already made up. I needed a minute to think. Upstairs, I placed a folded note on the pillow. "One night only." Back downstairs, she was already scrolling through her phone. "I've got a couple Zoom calls tomorrow, but I'll stay out of your hair," she said. "Just a few weeks, tops, I promise." I didn't agree to that. She looked up, feigned confusion. "What?" "This isn't a rental." She blinked, then waved it off. "Don't be silly, you need company." That night, after dinner, salmon she didn't offer to help cook, dishes she didn't offer to clean, I walked past the guest room and paused. The door was cracked. Inside, her roller bag was fully unzipped, clothes neatly stacked in drawers already. She'd unpacked, not settled in, claimed. Back in the kitchen, I opened my laptop to respond to an email. Hers was sitting right beside it. Open. The screen glowed with a document titled, "Reunited Sisters, Launch Empowerment Foundation, From Struggle to Sisterhood." I scrolled down. It had my name. Quotes I never said. A timeline I didn't live, a press release for a project I never joined. She didn't come to heal. She came to brand. I knew the moment Valora set her bag down in the hallway, she had no intention of leaving. It wasn't the way she kicked off her shoes like she owned the place, or how she asked which room had the best natural light. It was the way she smiled, wide, pleasant, and utterly hollow. That same smile she used when she convinced a judge I was unstable, when she told our mother she'd sent the quilt. "This room has the best light," she said casually, poking her head into the guest room. "Perfect for a fresh start, don't you think?" I didn't answer. I walked to the fridge and taped the printed guest agreement right next to the grocery list. The top line read, "Temporary, not permanent." She glanced at it and smiled. Not a word. A few days passed. Valora moved slowly but steadily. Her things trickled from suitcase to drawers. Shoes multiplied at the entryway. Toiletries appeared in the bathroom we didn't share. She rearranged books, set decorative candles on my dining table. One evening, I came home to find the living room furniture slightly rotated, just enough to be noticed, not enough to be called out. "What are you doing?" I asked. She looked up from where she was fluffing a pillow. "Just making things feel more balanced. This is family space, isn't it?" It wasn't a question. It was a dare. The next morning, over dry toast and burnt coffee she didn't brew, she brought it up. "Dad always said we'd share everything," she began, buttering her toast with more effort than needed. "He meant this house too. I just want what's fair." I didn't flinch. "You have something in writing?" She sipped, then smiled. "Come on, you know how he was. Sentimental. Said it more than once." "But not in a will?" She tilted her head. "Don't be cold, Amabel." That night, I scanned every relevant document into a secure drive. I emailed Lauren, my attorney. Subject: just in case. Valora had rewritten history before. I wouldn't let her do it again. A few days later, Jessamine received a call while we were prepping dinner. I could hear her voice shift, soft, confused. She handed me the phone. It's Ava, Valora's daughter. I hesitated before pressing the speaker. Hi. Ava's voice came through, hesitant and sad. Why don't you let Mommy stay? She said you want her to leave. Jessamine's eyes widened. I mouthed, it's okay. Ava, I said gently, your mom and I are figuring some things out. Grown-up stuff. It's not your job to fix it, okay? She was quiet. She said you were mad, that you'd always been mad. I'm not mad at you, I said. And I don't want you to worry about this. Everything will be okay. Okay, she whispered. We hung up. Jessamine sat beside me at the kitchen table. She's using her again. I know. You gonna say something? I almost did. I pulled out my phone, showed her a draft text. It read, You used her, like you use everyone. I deleted it. She's waiting for that reaction, I muttered. Mom, she feeds on conflict. The next evening, I invited Rachel and Dina, 2 friends from work, for dinner. They were the kind of women who wore linen without wrinkles and never forgot to bring wine. Valora, in full hostess mode, poured glasses like she lived there. She dominated the conversation, leaning into stories that painted her as a survivor, a pioneer of hardship, someone who had rebuilt after family complications. At the end of the day, she said, eyes flicking toward me, we decided to move forward, together. This space, this home, it represents the new vision we're building. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Dina stayed politely quiet. I stood. Walked to the office. Returned with a manila folder. I laid it in front of Valora. What's this? She asked, a smile still fixed but faltering. Guest agreement, I said. Sign it, or pack. The room fell still. Dina cleared her throat and sipped her wine. Rachel blinked slowly, then nodded like she'd just watched something inevitable unfold. Valora's eyes stayed on mine for too long. She didn't touch the paper. Later that night, I passed by her door. It was closed, the light still on beneath. I paused. Her voice, low and sharp, bled through the wood. She thinks this is over, she said. It's just getting started. I woke up to my phone vibrating against the nightstand, like it was trying to escape. The light outside hadn't broken yet, but the screen was already flooded. 37 texts, 4 voicemails, 6 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. My gut twisted before I even unlocked it. The first message was from a woman I barely knew from the community board. Amabel, is that text really from you? Attached was a screenshot. At first glance, it looked like a conversation thread, one where I'd allegedly written a series of scathing texts about Valora, cruel ones, words like manipulative, pathetic, and useless thrown around like confetti. I hadn't sent them, I knew that immediately, but to anyone outside this house, it didn't matter. Valora's post was already viral. A polished photo of her looking distraught, eyes glistening, captioned with just enough restraint to sound noble. I tried to make peace. This is what I got. She'd played her card. Victimhood dressed as grace. Mom! Jessamine called from the hallway, phone in hand. Have you seen this? I nodded. There's a TikTok. It's everywhere. Someone added music, like sad violin music. Of course they did. I sat down at the table, hands trembling not from fear, but from the knowing. I had felt it coming, but I hadn't known it would wear my face. She'd weaponized empathy, again, and this time she had the algorithm on her side. Later that morning, I pulled out the folder I'd kept tucked beneath the drawer in my desk. Inside, neatly labeled and time-stamped, were cloud backups from the security system I'd had installed 2 months ago, just after her suitcase wheeled through my front door. I clicked through thumbnails until I found the one that stopped me cold. Valora, standing in the living room, phone in hand, laughing quietly. She spoke clearly. No, make it sound like she's cold. Add one of those crying face emojis. People eat that up. Trust me, and make sure the timestamp looks recent. I watched it 3 times just to be sure. Then I dragged the clip to my desktop and attached it in an email. No subject, no body, just the link. I sent it to 2 journalists I knew had covered her in their Women to Watch piece last month. Then I opened a blank document and typed a sentence. When people tell you who they are, believe them the first time. I scheduled a press conference for that Thursday, invited the same nonprofit leaders Valora had charmed, the same media outlets that had posted her story without checking it. I didn't write an expose. I didn't prepare a speech dripping with vengeance. I just prepared to press play. The conference was small, intimate, even. A downtown event space with folding chairs, a simple projector, and too much coffee. I walked up to the front slowly, no podium, no fanfare. "Thank you for coming," I began, microphone steady in my hand. "Sometimes silence lets weeds grow." "As I let mine, but not today." I played the tape. Her voice filled the room. "Make it sound like she's cold. Add a crying emoji. People eat that up." No edits, no cuts, just her, unfiltered. Gasps, whispered curses. Someone's phone buzzed and they scrambled to silence it. Then came the silence that meant everything. I didn't explain. I didn't accuse. I just said, "I don't need to defend myself. I just needed you to see." A woman from the back stood. "I work with Bridge Outreach," she said. "We were supposed to partner with Ms. Tyrell next quarter. We won't be continuing." Heads nodded. Another voice chimed in. "She's speaking next week at the Women's Empowerment Gala." "Not anymore," someone muttered. The door at the back creaked open. Valora stood there, late, polished, perfect. Her eyes caught the screen just in time to see herself say the line again. She didn't speak, just stared. I waited. She turned and walked out. Her crown didn't fall, it shattered. Later that evening, back home, I sat on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through the aftermath. Posts had been deleted, statements issued, her PR firm had gone silent. Then I got a text, not from a number I knew. "We are terminating our representation with Ms. Valora. Please direct any future inquiries to her personal account." I stared at it, then I smiled. Some people build platforms, others build illusions, but illusions don't stand up to playback. Before heading upstairs, I checked the door, locked, and flipped off the porch light. An envelope was on the mat, handwritten, no stamp, no name. Inside, one line. "You don't know what else I have." The gallery was sleek, all glass and brushed steel, the kind of place that made your shoes echo louder than your voice. I slipped in through the side door, unnoticed, dressed in muted tones. It wasn't my event anymore. My name wasn't on the flyers, but I had helped plan it months ago when I still believed this fundraiser was about women helping women, not one woman trying to save face. The posters lining the walls read, "Empowered Women, Rebuilding Bonds." I almost laughed. Valora was front and center, arms crossed, eyes toward the future in every photo. They'd made her look presidential. I moved to the back of the room and stood near the drink table. Guests mingled, sipping from flutes of sparkling water, complimenting the floral centerpieces, brushing past me like I was invisible. I watched them approach Valora one by one, offering hugs, admiration, faux concern. "You're so brave to speak about your family." "I read your piece in the journal." "So moving." "She's turning pain into purpose," someone said behind me. "No," I thought, "she's turning my story into her platform." "She didn't just steal my life," I muttered under my breath. "She booked a spotlight for it." Midway through the program, the host, an older woman with a voice built for public radio, stepped to the microphone. "Please welcome tonight's keynote speaker, Valora Tyrell." Applause. Valora walked to the stage in a cobalt dress and heels too tall for comfort. She moved slowly, deliberately, with the air of someone who knew she owned the room. I watched her scan the audience and pause on me for half a second. Then she smiled. "Tonight," she began, "I want to talk about healing." I didn't flinch. I waited. She continued. "Forgiveness doesn't come easily, especially between sisters. But I believe in transformation. I believe in the power of family to rebuild, even when it feels impossible." She was good. I'll give her that. Her voice hit just the right register, her pacing gentle, her pauses well placed. And through everything I've endured, she said, I've learned that pain, if held with grace, can become legacy. Enough. I stepped forward, quiet but firm, and approached the side of the stage. In my hand was a small remote. The projector behind her flickered to life. Slide 1. A scanned draft of the press release she'd written before stepping foot in my house. Headline: Reunited Sisters Launch Empowerment Foundation. The room murmured. Slide 2. Quotes she'd attributed to me. All false. Slide 3. A spreadsheet of potential donors labeled Monetize Narrative. Valora turned. Amabel, what are you doing? I walked up to the mic. I'm using my voice. She tried to intercept me. I raised a hand. I let you talk. Now let me. The host hesitated, then handed me the mic. Sometimes silence is mistaken for weakness, I began, but mine was gathering proof. I told the room about the will, the forged documents, the custody interference, the smear campaign. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. She didn't lose a sister, I said. She tried to replace one. A beat of silence. Then a low murmur. I saw donors whispering to assistants. One woman stepped out with her phone pressed to her ear. Valora tried to speak. She took a step forward. I held my ground. She took my work, my child, my name, and packaged it like it was her redemption arc. But this isn't fiction, and I'm not her character. She turned, stiff, and walked off the stage mid-sentence, heels clicking hard against the polished floor. Applause didn't erupt, but it started, a slow, steady rhythm from a few in the back. Then more joined. After the program ended, I stood near the exit. Several women approached me quietly. You did the right thing, one said. Another leaned in. She did the same thing to our cousin. You just had the receipts. A representative from the foundation came forward. You will be reviewing all collaborations, she said carefully. I nodded. Thank you. I didn't stay for the reception. I walked to the parking lot, let the cool night air calm the fire still burning low in my chest. Before I started the car, my phone buzzed. A message from someone in my mother's circle. You said what we all needed to hear. Back home, I poured a glass of water and sat in silence. Then my email chimed. Subject: About your father's final letter. The email from the bank arrived just past 9 o'clock a.m. I'd just made coffee, still in my robe, watching the steam rise in front of the window. I almost deleted it, assuming it was spam. But then I saw the subject line. Alert: Flagged credit activity under your name. I clicked. Apparently, someone had tried to apply for a personal loan using my information. The application had been denied, thank God, due to inconsistencies between my listed address and the mailing address provided. That address, a P.O. box registered in Valora's name 2 years ago. I sat down. The mug rattled slightly against the table as I put it down. I called the bank and got a copy of the flagged application. Every detail matched mine. Date of birth, social, phone number, except the mailing address and a signature I hadn't written. Then I called Lauren. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She said, "Bring it in." Later that day, we sat across from one another in her downtown office, the hum of the air conditioner, our only company. "This qualifies as identity theft," she said, "even if she's your sister." Especially if she is. I thought about all the people who preach family first, blood ties above all. But what they never talk about is when blood becomes poison. They say blood is thicker than water, I told Lauren. But I've bled more from my own blood than from any stranger. She didn't smile. She just nodded and slid the paperwork across the desk. Let's file it quietly, but firmly. The next afternoon, as I returned home from errands, my phone buzzed. It was a name I hadn't seen in years, Peter, Valora's ex-husband. He didn't text a greeting, only, "Can we meet? There's something I think you should know." We met at a small cafe in Santa Cruz near the boardwalk. Peter looked older, tired around the eyes, but his presence felt deliberate, like he hadn't come to gossip. We ordered coffee, no small talk. "She asked me to lie for her," he said. I waited. "Back during your custody case, she wanted me to testify against you, said if I helped her discredit you, she'd make sure I stayed in Jessamyn's life too, through family channels." My hands stayed still, but my spine stiffened. She wanted to build her image, he continued. You were the easiest one to cut out. And you didn't? I refused. That's when everything between us finally cracked. I watched him for a moment. Why now? Peter sipped his coffee. Because what she's done to you, she's tried with others, and you're the first to expose her. I thought you deserved to know. He pulled out a small envelope and handed it to me. She also tried to get power of attorney over your mom before she passed. I found this after our divorce. I don't know if it matters anymore. It did. Every little piece filled in gaps I hadn't realized were still open. That evening, Lauren began drafting the formal civil suit. Not dramatic, not public, but precise. Meanwhile, word started to spread, slowly at first. One of Valora's business partners suspended their collaboration. A charity newsletter quietly rescinded the Women of Integrity recognition they'd given her only 3 months earlier. The digital silence around her name was more deafening than any scandal headline. She thought silence was immunity, I told Jessamine. She forgot silence watches and records. We sat in the backyard that evening, sunset washing over the deck in warm hues. Jessamine asked, "Do you feel better now that people are finally seeing the truth?" I paused before answering. "It's not about feeling better. It's about finally being seen." She smiled. Instead of popping a bottle or posting a victory message, I wrote a letter. It was addressed to the school district I'd grown up in, the one that had barely noticed when I faded from their system. I requested to fund a scholarship in Dad's name. Anonymous, quiet. Sometimes legacy isn't loud. It's planted, like seeds in other people's chances. The need for Valora's apology dissolved like sugar in coffee. She'd already paid, just not the way she expected. That night, as I was locking up, I found a large envelope on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper, my father's handwriting, and 6 words that made me sit down right where I stood. If you're reading this, something went wrong. I sat in my study long before the sun was up, the sky still the color of bruised lavender. The envelope lay on the desk in front of me, slightly yellowed, heavy with things unsaid. The handwriting on the front, Dad's, was unmistakable. I had run my thumb over each curve of ink for half an hour before I dared open it. Inside was one folded page. "Amabel," it began. "If you're reading this, something went wrong." I held my breath. My fingers trembled as I continued. I never wanted to leave this world in chaos, but I was too late and too weak to fix what had already been set in motion. I knew your sister was angling for control. I saw it before the stroke. She's not evil, just entitled. And I let her become that way. The words blurred for a second. I blinked hard. I left copies of everything with Paul Donnelly, my old friend from the VFW. He knew not to act unless something went off the rails. I'm guessing it has. Then the line that tore through me. I wasn't strong enough in life, but I hope to be in memory. I let the page fall onto my lap. A full-body silence followed. Not shock, not rage, just the sound of weight lifting off bones that had grown used to carrying what wasn't theirs. I cried then, not the loud, ugly kind, just a slow leak of something I hadn't even realized needed to leave. Later that afternoon, I stood in front of the fireplace with a matchbook in one hand and the forged copy of the will in the other. I struck a match. The paper curled quickly, blackening from the edges inward. I didn't flinch. "Some fires clean more than they destroy," I whispered. Then I opened my laptop. Drafts, saved messages, one in particular. Subject, "What you did to me." Written months ago. Every accusation, every documented lie, every emotional bruise traced in keystrokes. I highlighted the whole thing, deleted. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I no longer needed her to know. Jessamine and I visited the new community center 2 days later. It was still a construction site, gravel, exposed beams, echoes. But in the lobby, a sign already stood. Tyrell Learning Center, in honor of Robert Tyrell. She smiled at the name. "Do you think Grandma would have approved?" she asked. I looked at her. I think she would have been proud of the silence we broke. The guest room that once housed Valora's perfume and accusations now smelled of fresh paint. Jessamine and I had picked a color called Marigold Mist. Bright, warm, unapologetic. We repainted in laughter and loud music, every stroke a final word. One morning, a text came in from Valora. Simple. You ruined me. Hope it was worth it. I stared at it for a moment, then opened my email. To the foundation organizing the next Women's Circle. Subject, hosting offer. Message, happy to host your next women's event at my home. Let's call it Reclaiming the Narrative. I hit send. That night, we sat on the balcony, Jessamine and I, watching the waves chew gently at the cliffs below. The sea was indifferent, and that was comforting. I was pouring a second cup of tea when Jessamine returned from inside, holding a small, aged envelope. Found this tucked in the old Bible, she said. Said it was for your eyes only. My heart paused mid-beat. On the front, in delicate cursive, for her eyes only, from Mom. The letter from Mom was tucked inside an old Bible, its pages brittle and ink faded. Jessamine found it while dusting shelves I hadn't touched since we moved in. She handed it to me without a word, just a look. I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Valora had once stirred her coffee like she owned the room. The envelope read, for her eyes only, from Mom. My fingers hesitated before breaking the seal. Amabel, it began. I never knew how to talk to you after everything happened. I let too much slip through my hands. I watched your sister build a narrative because it was easier than stopping her. I paused, my heart beat louder in the quiet. I don't know if forgiveness means a hug or a dinner or anything close to family again. Sometimes it just means freedom, from the pain, the stories, the weight. Taped to the letter was a small key, labeled only, Donnelly Trust, Box 218. I didn't have to ask Jessamine. She was already grabbing her purse. At the bank in Baton Rouge, the safe deposit box clicked open. Inside, a thumb drive and a neatly folded document, notarized, dated 2 months before Dad passed. I opened the will amendment first. He had named me sole beneficiary of the land and business interests Valora had claimed, and below that, a letterhead I recognized from his hospice care. The drive contained a video. Back home, I plugged it into my laptop. The screen lit up, showing Dad sitting in a hospital bed, voice weak but steady. If you're seeing this, then the worst happened. I didn't get the paperwork where it needed to go in time. Valora, she blocked more than calls. She pressured me to change documents. She told me you didn't care, that you'd abandoned us. But I know the truth now. You never left. You were pushed out. He coughed, blinked slowly. I'm sorry I let her run the show. You were always the stronger one. Fix what I couldn't. Then silence. I looked at Jessamine. She nodded. Lauren filed the amendment and video footage within the week. The press picked it up fast. The headline wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. Hometown heiress faces legal reversal. Sister named sole beneficiary in surprise will update. The video leaked. Someone uploaded it to a local community page, and from there, it spread. Charities distanced themselves. Business partners canceled speaking engagements. The board she once chaired removed her name quietly but completely. A new hashtag floated across posts. She never saw it coming. I never commented. I never liked or shared. I just watched. Valora's silence became the loudest thing about her. Weeks later, Jessamine and I hosted a quiet dinner. Friends, laughter, no speeches. After the plates were cleared and the wine replaced by tea, I stood to thank them. This isn't a celebration of what we lost, I said. It's a celebration of what we reclaimed. They raised their glasses. To truth, Dina said. To starting over, Rachel added. I looked around the room and saw not what was missing, but what had finally arrived. They erased me once, I said. I wrote myself back in. That night, I walked alone to the beach behind the house. The air was crisp, the tide in rhythm. In my hand, an envelope. Inside it, a photo of Valora and me as kids, arms linked, sunburned, grinning. I whispered, goodbye. and tossed it into the sea. The waves took it without question. I didn't win because I got even, I said aloud. I won because I finally chose myself. And as the photo curled, salt soaking its edges, I said the last words I'd ever speak to her. She thought the oceanfront mansion was the prize, but it was the peace inside,